All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to our live stream today. We're just going to give you guys a few minutes for everyone to trickle in. Thanks for joining. Welcome. I see some of you starting to trickle in. We'll get started in just a few minutes. If you are here, feel free to drop a message in the chat, say hello. Today's live stream is going to be on the topic of early warning signs of dementia. So if there's any questions you already have or things you want us to talk about, feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll get started here in just a few minutes. Hi, Maya. Thanks for the comment. Welcome. Hi, MD. Thanks for the comment. All right, I'm seeing a few more viewers trickling in, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome. My name is Taylor Schumann. For those of you who don't know me, I am the editor and senior tech expert at SeniorLiving.Org, and today I am joined by Dr. Macie P. Smith. We're having a live Q&A on understanding dementia and the early warning signs. We're so excited to have you, Dr. Macie. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here, and it looks like we have some viewers who are just as excited.
Yes, I love it. Thanks everyone for the interaction. It's good to see you all popping in. So we're going to dive into our Q&A shortly, but before we do, I just want to give you guys a little bit of insight into Dr. Macie and her amazing experience. So she is a best-selling author known for her work on dementia competent practices in family caregiving matters. She's a licensed gerontology social worker and an award-winning Alzheimer's and dementia educator with over 25 years of experience coordinating care for aging and vulnerable populations. Dr. Smith works boundlessly to ensure those caring for loved ones are supported and play an active role in helping to shape the state of our care community. As a media contributor and multimedia personality, Dr. Smith has raised the level of caregiving visibility through viral posts and national headlines. Her advocacy efforts also have been acknowledged on Capitol Hill as she was a featured panelist at the White House Care convening during National Care Workers Recognition Month. So, wow, that is a lot of amazing accolades.
Thank
Welcome,
you.
Dr. Macie.
Thank you for having me, Taylor.
Yes, of course. Well, I would love to hear maybe about what inspired you in your career to become an advocate and an expert, regarding older adults and their caregivers and dementia specifically.
Well, I always like to say I definitely did not choose the field. The field chose me. I know it sounds cliche, but it absolutely is true. And I'll tell you, the first job in my field after getting my degree in social work was with the Department of Disabilities and Special Needs. So I worked with adults and children with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And from there, I just always felt a connection with those who were in vulnerable situations, those with vulnerabilities, how people would just really count them out or focus on their inabilities and their lack of, as opposed to focusing on what they can contribute and what they bring to the table. And when I learned how to facilitate from a strength based approach when it comes to vulnerable populations and how they do well and thrive well and be productive members of society, I was like, they should not be in a vacuum. People need to know about this because all of us are only an accident, injury, or illness away from being in a vulnerable situation anyway. And so, I always like to leave people a little bit better than how I found them. And so, information and education really should be free. But just depending on how things are rolled out, it may not be. But I am a vessel for providing people with information, education, probably sometimes in too of an entertaining way, just to make it palatable, so that way it can actually change the course of their day, change the course of their life, and most importantly, if they are in position to provide care for someone else, they have to be healthy mentally, physically, emotionally in order to be able to bring that energy and that intellect into their caregiving role, whether it's a family caregiver, whether it's a professional caregiver, because when you're in a helping profession, no matter what your role is, you are a caregiver. You are providing some level of support services to someone who's in need. So always root for the underdog. If we're watching like a sports game and I don't know who's playing, whoever everybody else doesn't go for, I go for that person because it makes it interesting. You know, everybody can't be the same, so it makes it interesting. But even when things got a little difficult at that particular job, I tried to leave the industry. I tried to. This is funny. I even tried to go work at Walmart and McDonald's, but I couldn't even get an interview. Like, so I'm like, either I'm like not all that I thought I was, or this is just where I'm supposed to be. And so when I tried to step out into a different industry and it didn't work, because I tried to be pharmaceutical sales and I'm not a salesperson, it came to me, God said, this is what you need to do because you're good at this. People, listen to you. People really follow what you say because I don't just bring it from a research based perspective. As a social worker, I'm a practitioner, so I bring practice. And practice informs research. I do research too, and research people is not the same thing as Googling. And when you Google, you're looking something up. Research takes a good 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And so my research also informs my practice. And so I'm really big on breaking down complex ideas into palatable, bite sized pieces of information that people can use to impact their day and their life.
I love that. And I love that you said, you always root for the underdog, looking at the vulnerable populations. I think it's so important that everyone should be seen and heard and cared for. And so it's so important that people like you are willing to do that. And I love how you like to break things down in a fun and palatable way because it just makes it so much more exciting and
Yeah,
accessible.
I agree. I agree. And then Taylor, it helps people to be open to talking about it. Many people don't receive the resources that they need because they don't talk about it. They don't
Mhm.
acknowledge it. They want to keep it hidden. They want to, figure it out themselves because they don't want other people to know what they're going through in fear of being judged. And we see that a lot, especially in many communities, but especially in the Black community. There still is a stigma when it comes to mental health and mental illness, which is the same as physical health, and so when you got an ailment, like if your stomach is hurting, you'll tell the whole world, I had stomach pains. So if something's not going on right with your brain, then that's something you want to share with, not with the whole world, but share with trusted partners and go get that looked at. And so, you have to really break down barriers in certain cultures and certain communities depending on their generational experiences. So you got to be able to assess the situation and make a determination how best to present the information, because you definitely don't want to go in saying, mama, it is something wrong with your brain. I think you got Alzheimer's, you need to go to the doctor. No, that's not how it should be brought to the person's attention. So again, it depends on the family setting. It depends on the characteristic of the person, how information should be relayed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you said about, breaking down stigmas. There's so much stigma around mental health. And I feel like
Yeah.
a lot of people, especially when it comes to dementia, just don't fully understand it. So
No, and I have to tell people all the times, and they do feel like it is a mental illness. It is not a mental illness. It is a medical condition. It is listed in the DSM-5, which is the mental health diagnosis, and it's because it does affect the brain. It is a neurocognitive disorder, and so the diagnosis would be neurocognitive disorder and the particular type it is, because there are over 100 types or over 100 causes of dementia.
wow. Yeah, that's a lot. It's a lot of different types.
It is. It is.
Okay, awesome. Well, I would love to dig in here and just we'll enter our Q&A portion of the chat, learn more about dementia, the early warning signs, all of that. So any of you viewers, if you have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We will definitely cover them throughout this conversation if there's anything you want to know more about. Just make sure that you're logged into your YouTube account, otherwise you won't be able to join the chat. We also have a few questions that were submitted before this live stream, so we'll go ahead and dive in.
All right.
So first question, what are some of the earliest and maybe most overlooked warning signs of dementia?
Oh, that's a good question, because typically when you think dementia, you automatically think forgetfulness, memory loss, getting lost in familiar places. While those are characteristics of dementia, it's much more than memory loss. One thing that people overlook is language. So language can be an early warning sign of a type of dementia. And when I say language, I mean the person may begin to use different words. So if you're accustomed to someone speaking well, and when I say speaking well, I mean their subject and verbs agree. They're using larger words, more academia type words, and now they're using more simpler words. The subject and verb may not be agreeing, or they may use more slang or use more colloquialisms because that's in the back of the brain. That's easier to get to. You don't recognize it because you're saying to yourself, okay, they just don't feel like using those other words. They don't feel like thinking because people people don't like to think all the time. I know I don't. Taylor, I don't know about you, but sometimes I get home, I don't want to think. I'm cutting on reality shows because you definitely don't have to think to watch those, right?
Yes.
And so to the person that's on the outside looking in, they're saying, okay, that's different for that person, but they're probably stressed out. They're probably tired. They probably don't feel like, having a long drawn out conversation, using these, big words, using jargon. But what's happening is they can't remember the words that they want to say. They can't remember how to put those phrases together. So they go back to what's in the back of the brain. So I'll tell you, I'll say this and what that means. So if someone has Alzheimer's disease in particular, what happens is the disease tends to attack the hippocampus first, which is where the short term memories are stored. New information, meeting new people, learning new things. And with a healthy brain, the brain goes through the whole memory process, executive function, and it deposits in the back of the brain. And so typically you would see someone forget recent information with Alzheimer's, but they can remember long time ago when they got married, but can't remember if they ate breakfast that morning. And so the person may not remember how to put those words together to speak the way they've always spoken, what you can remember since they've been adult or professional, and they grab what they can from the back of the brain, which is something that they've attained or experienced or learned or preserved early on in life. Another area is issues with senses. So we think about olfactory. I'm not going to say vision because I've been wearing glasses and contacts since I was in elementary school, but olfactory. So concerns and issues with smell and also taste could be a contributing factor or early warning sign depending on the person and depending on what type of dementia it might be. Another thing we may overlook, Taylor, is being able to perform familiar tasks. So if they've always made the bed a certain way, my daddy is military, he makes the bed a certain way. He's not making the bed with pillows on it. Like everything is coming off and he's starting from scratch every time. So now he may be making the bed up and he's leaving the pillows on the bed while he's moving stuff around. And you're saying to yourself, that's different, but he's probably don't feel like taking everything off. But that could be an early warning sign for that person. And it's very important to acknowledge that when you've met one person living with dementia, you've met that one person. Everyone is different. There are some typical signs and that we see across the board, but they may not look the same way on everyone. And it's important to know who the person was before the onset of the disease, because that's going to help explain if something is different, because it could be different for you, but might not be different for me.
That's super interesting. One of our viewers, Maya, said, interesting, did not know this about language as a potential warning sign. And I didn't realize that either. And like you said, you might say like, oh, they're just tired at the end of the day, or he didn't want to make the bed the same way. And so, yeah, like you said, knowing that person and thinking about the small day-to-day habits that they have, that honestly had never crossed my mind.
And you just kind of overlook it, right? You as a person on the outside looking in, you're rationalizing. That's why people say hindsight is 2020. People tell me all the time, oh my God, I wish I had known this when. This is why this was happening. This makes sense because now you're thinking about when you actually notice it. And I'll tell you, by the time we on the outside notice it, that person had already been dealing with it for like 15, 20 years now. And the first stage, because it's typically 7 stages of a progressive type of dementia. The first stage is no issue at all. Then there's subjective cognitive impairment, and that's where the actual person is experiencing the memory loss and the forgetfulness, but they hide it very, very well. Nobody else knows it because they can compensate for what they're forgetting. If they forget a word, they use a new word. If they forget a step, they just do it a different way. If they forget, how to make choices or make a decision about a particular thing, they may chalk it up to, oh, I'm stressed out. Oh, I didn't feel like doing it. Or I didn't want it anyway. So making excuses as to why they did not make the proper judgment in this particular way. So you got to be mindful of that too, because they hide what they can't remember very, very well.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense. And so we've covered maybe some of the early warning signs, but what about on the other side of things? How can families differentiate between just normal age-related memory loss and dementia warning signs?
Usually I tell families, if you think it's a problem, it's a problem. Right? Because there is normal age memory impairment. We have all forgotten stuff. We've all walked into the kitchen and forgot all about what we went in there for. Don't be alarmed by that. Some of you have put the ice cream in the cupboard. I know you have, and then it started to melt because I've done that too. Because you're focused on other things. You're stressed out. You're trying to accomplish a lot of different things at one time, and so that's typical, right? But it's when that memory loss begins to impair the person's life. You forgot where you parked your car at Target. You hit the little chirp chirp, you find it, go about your day, you're good. It's probably not a problem, right? It's when you forget where you parked your car, you have I call it a chirper, but it's the remote in your hand. You don't even think to hit the button so it can alarm, right? So that way you can find your car. So that's the problem solving piece of it.
Mm.
We see problem solving and executive functioning concerns for someone who has vascular dementia. We also see that with someone who has frontotemporal dementia in the early stages. Or you hit the chirp, you find your car, you get in the car, and now you can't remember how to put it in reverse or drive. So it's impairing the person's day to day. It's impairing and affecting how they live their life normally. Now, again, based on this particular person, we think about riding a bike. That's like remote memory. You just get on and you just ride. You can't explain how to ride a bike. Now, someone with dementia will probably be able to continue to be able to ride a bike for a long period of time because they don't have to think about the steps that are involved. It just comes on, right? But if they begin to struggle with even how to get on a bike, again, it's affecting their day to day because they ride their bike for exercise every day, then that's a problem. That's not normal age memory impairment. I'm not saying that it's necessarily dementia or even a progressive type of dementia, but now it's time to seek medical attention. And when you seek medical attention, you want to ask the doctor, if it's you or your loved one, to rule out treatable causes of memory loss or treatable causes of dementia, because a doctor will say quick, oh, this is age related dementia. I don't like when they say that. So let me preface this. I'm not a medical doctor. I am a licensed social worker. I have a doctorate in higher education leadership, because people come to me and say, can you write me a prescription for, no, I can't. I can't do that. Like, no. But I do work with medical practices as a medical social worker, right? So the doctor will say age-related dementia. That is not a thing. Age is the number one risk factor for developing dementia, but there are more people over the age of 65 and 85 who don't have dementia than who do. What the doctor is saying is that the person may be experiencing MCI, mild cognitive impairment. And we typically see that mild cognitive impairment could be a biomarker for Alzheimer's or a progressive type of dementia, or it could be related to aging experiences. Again, I'm not just going to say age. I'm just not going to say that, but because with age comes experiences or the lack thereof. Now that you're older and you're retired, you're living a sedentary lifestyle. So you're not doing much. You're not thinking much. You're not engaging yourself with other people. So now you have isolation. You have lack of learning. You may have depression setting in. And so those lifestyle, you may not even be eating well or dehydrating yourself because no one's coming over engaging with you. Eating and drinking, that's an experience. That is entertainment, right? So you eat more and you hydrate yourself more when you're doing it with other people and you have a purpose and a reason. And so if that person is isolating themselves and they're alone a lot of the times, they're not engaged, they're not motivated to do anything, it's because of the lack of eating healthy, the lack of engagement, the lack of learning, increased risk for depression. That's leading to MCI, mild cognitive impairment. And so you want the doctor to rule out treatable things that can affect someone's forgetfulness or someone's memory loss. It could be a urinary tract infection, which is an acute condition that can be treated. It could be depression. It could be vitamin deficiency. Vitamin B12 is a vitamin that we see deficient a lot in our older population. Vitamin B12 promotes healthy blood flow throughout the body. And if it's healthy blood flow throughout the body, it's going throughout your brain too. Your brain is your being. If your brain is not healthy, your overall physical is not going to be healthy because your brain tells your body what to do and your body responds. It could be vitamin D deficiency. We get vitamin D naturally from the sunlight, but if they're always inside, the blinds aren't open, they're not getting that, getting serotonin that's, promoting a good mood, that can increase their risk of having dementia symptoms that could possibly be treated. And it's important to know that dementia is a group of behaviors or a set of symptoms a person displays as a result of having a condition that's impairing their cognitive state. Dementia itself is not the actual diagnosis. It's a neurocognitive disorder that's caused by something.
That's interesting. And even just the way you were talking about the verbiage that doctors will throw around, and that's like, yeah, just especially because I think, people just assume, oh, you're old, so you're going to have dementia. It's like,
Exactly.
it's not.
It's not a normal part of aging. Having dementia or Alzheimer's is not a normal part of aging. If the doctor says you or your loved one has dementia, the very first thing you need to ask is what's causing it and what type is it, doc? And they're going to be like, oh, you've been talking to Taylor and Macie, so let me get on it.
I love it. All right. Oh, it looks like we have a few questions from the audience. Annie asks, what are the best mental activities to potentially reduce the risk of dementia?
Thank you for asking that question, Annie. I always think this is as a fun question, and I'm not going to throw any shade, but some people might think I'm ready to throw some shade, but I'm not. Mental activities. You want to be a lifelong learner. You want to continue to learn new things. As a matter of fact, we're not in school anymore, but this is the most instrumental time to be learning, because if you don't use it, you lose it. That we think about that in terms of skill set, but it's with brain power as well. So for those of you who are doing the word finds, you ain't doing nothing for your mental acuity. All you are doing is circling the words you already see, right? We want you to do crossword puzzles so that way you can read the question or read the clue and then you think about the answer. Even if you get it wrong, which I always get it wrong, I'm thinking, when you're thinking, you're building neurons and you're building a cognitive reserve. So if you were to develop Alzheimer's disease, you can actually delay the onset of dementia, the symptoms that we see. So crossword puzzles, Sudoku, playing games against the clock because you're thinking. Solitaire, that may, well, no, I can't give you nothing positive for solitaire because you're really playing against yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can start over whenever you get ready. So you want to play games against the clock. You want to learn new information by learning a new language, learning to play a new instrument, going new places, experiencing new countries and continents and things of that nature, because you're going to think and you're going to anticipate and you're going to experience. And so whenever you can think about something, that is a mental activity that's going to build mental acuity and build a cognitive reserve. Read new books, watch new movies that are that gets you thinking, that are riveting. Don't do like me, because when I get that mindless behavior, I get there and start watching the same movie on Lifetime I've seen about 5 or 6 times. But Taylor, I cry every time. So that's entertaining for me. But you want to read and learn and grow and experience. Lifelong learners, lifelong experiencing. You definitely don't want to live a sedentary lifestyle. My mom would always tell me, and again, I was telling Taylor offline, I'm from the country. I am from a really, really, really small town called North, South Carolina, which is in Orangeburg County. So Taylor, you won't know this woman. It's Eartha Kitt. You don't know Eartha Kitt. But Eartha Kitt, look, she's like, no, y'all know Eartha Kitt out there. So if y'all know Eartha Kitt, let us know that you know Eartha Kitt. She was a famous singer, a famous actress. She is from South Carolina. So that's where I'm from. And so my mom, she would say, I don't want to retire because when you retire, you die. And I was like, where did you get that data from? I mean, what research are you reading? But what she's saying is when you retire, you don't do much anymore. And when you don't do much anymore, that's when illnesses set in. That's when those muscles become rigid. And that's when you're not engaging your mind and you become really depressed. Anxiety sets in, and that's when those chronic illnesses come on and you can't manage it, and then you die. So basically what she was saying is, if when you retire you're not active. But she's retired now and she's quite active. I find now when people retire, they're actually doing more than what they were doing when they were actually punching a clock or working. And so again, you want to always keep your mind going. You always want to, keep learning new information. But I'm gonna counter that too, because you got to have a nice balance, right? You can't go 24/7. Many people underestimate the power of sleep. You got to be active and engaged, but you also have to have time to relax and rest and rejuvenate. Adults should get anywhere from 7 to 9 hours of sleep, the good sleep, the REM sleep every night, because as you're learning and engaging and being a lifelong learner during the day, at night is when your brain rejuvenates from the wear and tear of the day. I call it superficial damage. And so when you're not getting the required amount of sleep at night, then you're basically engaging and being active off of damaged brain cells. The more you do that, the more you increase your risk of developing a progressive type of dementia.
I love to hear. Those are some things I hadn't thought about. Like, I was like, oh, you just have to do brain games. But I love to read and travel. So it's good to know that some of the things are just kind of built into if you have hobbies
Yeah.
like.
And it's a lifestyle. It's you want to build an engaging lifestyle. You want to build a motivating lifestyle. You don't want to just do the same thing all day every day, because you're not learning anything. You're not showing any interest in anything. And what happens is it becomes remote. Have you ever driven down the road, and when you think back about your 10-mile drive, you can't remember what you saw? You can't remember how many trucks you passed, how many cars you passed. You can't remember any of the sights you saw,
Yeah.
because it's routine and you don't want it to be routine.
Yeah. I love that. That's a good point. I'll do that. Sometimes I get places I'm like, don't really know how I
I
got
don't even
here.
really, exactly. I don't even really know. Did I run that red light? I don't know, but I didn't hear. You start thinking about. So you want to be intentional and you want to be mindful about what it is that you're doing, because you're staying engaged.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, one of our viewers, James, says, my grandma stayed sharp whooping us at board games until she died at 84.
I love that. In a game that a lot of seniors would play is bridge. Like, they have bridge tournaments. Like, I can't do it. Like, I can play spades a little bit. I mean, you got to think. You got to count your books. I mean, they are magnificent when you watch them, and they're doing their card games. It's like, man, like they are like legit.
Yeah. I've tried bridge and I'm like, I don't know how
I
you
can't.
guys do.
Yeah, I just now as I get older, I might need to learn, Annie, how to play bridge. That might help me in the long run.
Yes. Well, maybe one day. We'll wait for another day. Okay, another question. MD asks, is there a typical age for when most people develop dementia? And what's the risk factor of offspring developing the disease?
Oh, another great question. And I hope MD doesn't stand for medical doctor, because I might be preaching to the choir. So the typical age is around 65, you know, 65 and older. If someone is diagnosed with Alzheimer's or progressive type of dementia prior to the age of 65, that's considered early onset, not early stage, but early onset dementia. And we find that typically goes a lot faster than if a person was diagnosed after the age of 65. Knowing that age is the number one risk factor, it makes sense when it's broken down why more people over the age of 65 are diagnosed with it. So typically around the age of 65. And I would venture to say between 65 and 70, actually. But again, the symptoms were there 15 to 20 years prior to. This is around diagnosis. In terms of developing dementia, MD, it would be 15 to 20 years prior to that, but diagnosis comes about around the age of 65. Now, in terms of an offspring developing a progressive type of dementia, we know now that, again, age is the number one risk factor, but lifestyle choices is the second largest risk factor. Actually, genetics and heredity is 1 to 2% of the risk factor. It's more so lifestyle, what you eat, what you're drinking, how you're living your life. Now, there is a particular Alzheimer's that's called familial Alzheimer's disease. If a person has familial Alzheimer's disease, it's 100% chance. I'm sorry, for the familiar gene. So when we think about the familial gene, it's 100% chance they're going to get Alzheimer's disease and 50% chance they're going to pass it to an offspring. And so it's called familial Alzheimer's disease, and the gene is the presenilin gene. I'm sorry. So the presenilin gene, and it's spelled presenile, is when the person develops familial Alzheimer's disease, and it's 50% chance they'll pass it to an offspring. But that is the only gene that I know that has 100% or even 50% chance of passing it to an offspring. All the other types of dementia is going to come about as a result of lifestyle choices. And now there are genes that do increase your risk. One of them is the APOE-4 gene. More women have that particular gene code than men, but it's APOE 2, 3, and 4, but it's that number 4 that's causing the concern. Now, many people have this particular gene. They don't have Alzheimer's, but then there are some that have this gene code that do have it. And so researchers have identified APOE-4 as a particular gene code that significantly increases your risk of developing Alzheimer's. Then there's the APP gene, and then it's one of the genes is called the Alzheimer's gene. So, it just depends. So that's the only one that I know of that's offering that 100% and then that 50% passing to the offspring.
Okay, interesting. So our biggest concern then is really the lifestyle factor.
Things that we can control.
Yes, which I like that. We can
Yeah, I love it too. You can control what you do. You just can't control who you were born to.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. James asks, is excessive reminiscing about the past and verifying dates from earlier in life a possible warning sign?
It could possibly be, but not that alone. I would look at that in addition to what else is happening. So do an inventory of that person's behavior. Do an inventory of what changes have been made. Do an inventory of how their life is being affected by whatever is going on around them. It may be that they're trying to hold on to the very piece of independence that they've had. They're trying to hold on to their mind. It very well could be, or it also could be depression. I don't know if the person lives alone, if they're engaged throughout the day, if they have a meaningful lifestyle, if they have people in their life that's showing them value and worthiness. It may be that. So it could be a myriad of reasons, but the fact that you asked that question, and I appreciate that's something that you want to pay closer attention to see what else is happening. Is that happening in addition to forgetfulness? Are they forgetting recent information? Are they forgetting recent dates? Like you have people who go to Bible study every Wednesday night, or who go to the gym every Monday morning, but now they're not going every Wednesday. They're not going every Monday. So are they forgetting these dates because it's more recent information? So again, I would get a notebook. It could be a digital or a handwritten notebook. I don't use a handwritten notebook because I can't understand my writing. So I put everything in my digital notes. And so start your notebook and start writing down what other changes in addition to this you see.
I love that. Okay, another question we have. Can you explain the staging of dementia? My loved one has been diagnosed with vascular dementia and Alzheimer's, and it feels like stage 4 of 7 to me, the beginning of moderate, but the doctor said it's mild.
Wow. So if the doctor said they're in the early stages, which I'm assuming that's what mild, I'm assuming that's what the doctor is referring to when they say mild. I'll tell you, they could be in the early stages, but if they become injured or ill, it exacerbates the symptoms. So it could look like they're in stage 5, 6, or 7, or what have you, but they're really still in the early stages. So I would say, number one, just make sure there's nothing health related going on that's exacerbating those conditions. Like I said earlier, a urinary tract infection, a vitamin deficiency. Some individuals, some families I've worked with, they found out that their loved one has had diabetes and never had an issue with their blood sugar levels before, but now they do. So you want to check out everything that is considered treatable, which could explain why you see a severe exacerbation in the behavior. So the stages look differently for everybody. In the early stages, they can still live independently. They just need reminders. And I'm just going to do early, mid, and late, because even those are broken down. So early stages, they just simply need reminders, and they can receive those reminders and process those reminders and still live independently. The mid stage, early to mid, mid to late, I consider that the most challenging stage, and it is the longest stage, because they know just enough to be dangerous, right? They know just enough to put themselves in dangerous situations. And so the mid stages is just really a mixture between the early stages. They can do some stuff independently, but now they probably need somebody to kind of stay with them either during the day or definitely at night, because they may begin to get more confused at night. They may be dealing with some sundowning in the mid stages, and they may attempt to leave their safe space, leave their home, thinking that they're going to work or thinking that they're going to pick up children, thinking that they're doing something that they no longer do. And then in the later stages, that's when you see a lot of the challenging behaviors kind of subside, because now the language changes. In the mid stages, you may see them having difficulty putting words together, putting phrases together. Sometimes it just may sound like they're talking all over themselves, and the chair was over there and I sat down, and then the milk, and I don't know where that went. And that's how it is. It really is like that. And I'm happy about that. And sometimes it will. You see more of that in the middle stages. They can say words just fine. They just having trouble putting them together. In the later stages, you might find that they may not speak at all, because they're no longer able to formulate the words, and they may communicate more now with their actions. It may be some verbal aggression. It may be some physical aggression. They may act out, or they may act in with depression, isolating themselves, not talking, not engaging with other people, not wanting to be around other people, because it's so much, then they can't process it. You have to have a fully functioning, accommodating brain to be able to process your environment. You may find that they no longer walk. You will see, I've had several cases where the person just stopped walking. I mean, there was no physical ailments. We had therapists come in. There's no reason for them not to be able to walk. The only reason is their brain is not functioning in a way that tells their legs how to walk. In some cases, their gait may be off, and they may be afraid to walk. And so you may see, not, we call it adult failure to thrive in the later stages: not eating, not drinking, not walking, not talking. So I hope that answers your question. But if the doctor is saying that they're in the early stages, you may want to take the person to the doctor, your loved one, to rule out any treatable causes of this exacerbation. And let me also say this: simply because your loved one has dementia does not mean that they should not get optimal treatment. Do not, the same thing you do for someone who is 16 years old, 20 years old, or 40 years old. If my loved one who has dementia has the same concerns, you treat them the same way. Now, ideally, if the person is over the age of 65, they would see a geriatrician. That is, I'm a gerontologist, so I work with the social side of it. I better manage and understand the comprehensive care model for seniors and their family caregivers, and the challenges, and mitigating the challenges for seniors and their families, developing a long-term care plan that works for them. A geriatrician is a medical doctor that specifically treats those over the age of 65. That is a specialty area. The reason it's a specialty area is because When I mention the 16-year-old, the 20, the 40-year-old, I want you to treat my loved one who has dementia and over the 65 the same way. When I say treat them the same way, I mean consider their complaints and their concerns the same way. Now, the actual treatment is going to be different. Prescription that I subscribe to the younger population, I may not be able to subscribe. I may not be able to prescribe prescribe to the older population because they're older. So biological changes happen naturally. You can't control that. And also the medical condition of dementia being an added component, it's going to cause that person to react differently to those medications. So the American Geriatric Society, the Geriatric Society of America, GSA, they have developed a checklist, a medication checklist. It's called the Beers checklist, BEERS. And this particular checklist lists a ton of medications and the dosage that are not recommended for those over the age of 65. Now, that does not mean that the person over the age of 65 should not take the medication, but that means you want to have a conversation with the doctor about the benefits and the risks of the medications.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like you said, so much of it is making sure that they're getting the care that they need and going to their doctors. And I think this other question that we have here kind of aligns with this as well. Safe Home asks, what's the best way to get a dementia or Alzheimer's diagnosis? Who do you go to if your loved one you suspect that your loved one has it? Good Lord, I'm having trouble with words today.
You and I both. Look, subscribe. Sorry if this has already been covered. Let me say this. I repeat myself all the time. With repetition comes understanding, and someone else may have logged on later. So thank you for asking the question. So couple of things. The only way to know if you have Alzheimer's disease is on autopsy. And since can't nobody get an autopsy while they're walking around, the doctor provides a reasonable diagnosis of Alzheimer's, vascular, frontotemporal, or what have you. So, and I write about this in my book. I have 2 books out on everywhere you get your books: A Dementia Caregiver Call to Action, The Journey, and A Dementia Caregiver's Guide to Care. And I actually break down all the steps that should happen or should take place before an actual diagnosis of Alzheimer's is provided. Does that happen all the time? Absolutely not. It does not. Sometimes it does happen. So if it is a brain condition, and Alzheimer's it is a neurocognitive disorder, so that's brain. So the neurologist should be the one to diagnose a person with a progressive type of dementia, because when you ask the primary care doctor who typically does the diagnosing, when you ask that primary care doctor what type is it, then that's going to be a trigger for them to make the referral to the neurologist. So the neurologist should be the one to make the diagnosis, because the neurologist is going to do brain scans. The neurologist is they should also order a cognitive assessment, not a cognitive screening, but a cognitive assessment that's going to last well over an hour. Now, they used to do it in the neurologist's office, but it takes so long. Many neurologists now will refer it out to a psychiatrist. And so a psychiatrist will do the cognitive assessment, send the results to the neurologist. The neurologist will look at the medical doctor's report, because got to look at established baseline. What was the person able to do before, and what are they no longer able to do now? So with the medical information, with the brain scans, and with the cognitive exam, then that's where the reasonable diagnosis would come from. So if you suspect your loved one has a progressive type of dementia, you always want to start with the primary care doctor, because the primary care doctor is going to be the nucleus for all of this. They handle the person's overall medical. And so all of the specialists should be funneling in their information to that primary care doctor, so the primary care doctor can manage the overall care. Does that happen? Absolutely not. Even if the specialist and the primary care doctor is in the same healthcare system, they still don't look at the records. And so you, as the loved one or the advocate, you have to ensure you call the psychiatrist's office and say, can you be sure to send that to Dr. Lynn? You call the oncologist, can you be sure to send that report to Dr. Lynn? And you have to follow up to ensure that Dr. Lynn has the report. When you take your loved one into the primary care doctor, you need to ask, do you have the report from the oncologist? Do you have the report from the psychologist? Do you have the report from the psychiatrist? Do you have the report from the neurologist? If the primary care doctor does not have the report, then you just should know that the care that the person is getting at that moment may not be a comprehensive level of care. And so it may be that you may have to go and get the records and bring it back to the primary care doctor so they could have it. I also recommend that family members, along with their loved one, because we're getting ready to talk about HIPAA now and the Privacy Care Act, you and your loved one create an online electronic health record with the login information, the password. They're going to give you permission to have their login information. You want to have that so that way you can communicate with all the doctors and the specialists, and that you can also provide them with information and that you can receive information, because sometimes your loved one is going to go to the doctor without you, because they're still private and they still want their independence, and rightly so. But that is your way to ensure that you're still managing their care.
Okay, interesting. So now that we know kind of how you can get diagnosed, which it sounds like there's a lot of legwork to make sure that all the doctors are communicating, but that's really good to know, to be proactive about that. But so after you're diagnosed, Maya asks, what are the potential benefits of getting diagnosed as early as possible?
Wonderful. Great question. Getting diagnosed early on will give you the opportunity to plan and to prepare. When you're planning for the care of someone with dementia, you have to build a team. It's going to give you time and opportunity to really look into who you need on your team. You can go ahead and make contact and build that team for your loved one, but also for you as the caregiver and family member. You need to get connected to support groups. You need to get connected to community resources. So not only they can be a support for you, but you can be a support for them by sharing what your experiences are. I tell everyone to get a certified elder attorney. You want to have a certified elder attorney in place to ensure that your documents are in place. And when I say documents, I mean the healthcare power of attorney, the durable power of attorney. That does not mean you take over their life. That does not mean you make all the decisions for that person, because they still have their rights and they will still maintain their rights. But you will have the proper documents in place in the event they are not able to make decisions for themselves, which the disease will develop into that. You're ready to go with making the proper decisions as it relates to their medical care, as it relates to their finances. And so the biggest benefit is to be able to plan, but also understanding what to expect in terms of how you provide care. And again, building your team, because you're not going to be able to provide care 24/7. And so you want to get those support services in as early as possible. In-home care is something that I almost always recommend and put in place for my families, because that professional can be there when you can't and still provide the engagement. It'll be a fresh set of eyes. It'll be a fresh set of ears, a fresh heart. It is a trying experience when you're caring for someone with a chronic illness like dementia, because it not only weighs on you physically, but it weighs on you emotionally and cognitively. Because for those of you who are caring for loved ones, it's almost like it's a slow death. You're actually seeing the person who you once knew as being strong and viable and opinionated, being able to make those tough decisions and being there for you. It appears as if that you're losing that, and you're losing that person. You may be losing that, but the person is still there. They're still your mom, they're still your dad, they're still your sister, your spouse, but they're just at a different point in their life as that particular person.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think I like that you talk about, joining support groups. One thing we always chat about is the importance of not only caring for your loved one, but caring for yourself so that you can provide optimal care and also just maintain your quality of life. So
Right.
I love that you touch on that. And so, as you mentioned, there's really great options like home care to bring people in to help, because you can't be, watching your loved one 24/7. So I'm curious, how do caregivers balance kind of respecting a loved one's autonomy and their decisions while ensuring that they're receiving all of the care and the help that they need? So for instance, if you want to bring someone in to provide care, but they're resistant.
Yeah. And they'll say, first of all, I don't need any help. Second of all, who is this person you're bringing into my house, right? And they have the right. We got to keep in mind, they have the right to refuse help. They have the right to refuse care. But as family members, it weighs on us. It's very heartbreaking, because we want the best for our loved ones the same way they wanted the best for us. But here's the difference. They raised us from a child, so they were able to chastise us and restrict us but they're adults. They may be thinking cognitively as a toddler, but they're not a toddler. They're an adult and they still feel it here. And so, how you're able to do that is ensuring that they have the support that they need while ensuring that they have their autonomy and independence is the way you communicate it. It's what you say and how you say it. If you know your loved one is strong minded, and it's like my grandmama. So my grandmama developed dementia too, well into my career in doing dementia competent practices. Now I was dumbfounded and confused when she got it because it was my grandmama. Everybody else gets it, not my grandmama. You know what I mean? And so it was really hard for me to wrap my mind around it and actually pull myself out of the granddaughter role and present myself in the professional role, doing for her what I do for my families and my clients. And so when we think about how we communicate it, number one, they want to hold on to all their independence. They don't want to run the risk of being placed in, out of home placement in an assisted living or nursing home. So they have to present as if everything is all good, right? And so if you bring someone in, that's an indication that I'm weak, I'm less than, and that I'm not able to take care of myself. And so you're not bringing that person in to take care of them. Maybe you can't take your mom or your loved one to the grocery store like she wants to go, but Miss Maybell can. So, Mom, how about we just get Miss Maybell to come and take you to the grocery store? Now, Miss Maybell may come in there for 4 hours a day, but during those 4 hours, she's there so that way she's actually working for you, right? So you tell Miss Maybell what you want her to do, or you bringing someone in to help clean, right? They're not there to take care of them. They're there to take care of your home or whatever else you need them to do, because what that does is it's elevating that person. They're still in control of their life, and they're actually telling someone else what to do. So now they're still in the authoritative role, right? That brings about more independence, that brings about confidence, and they'll let their guard down a little bit. But a lot of times what happens, Taylor, is loved ones go in being the authoritative figure, being the boss. Mama, you can't do this anymore. So I'm bringing these people in to do this for you. You might as well take the air out of them, because now why am I here? Who am I here for? Because now I have to depend on this stranger for my livelihood. So it's all in the way you present the information and allow them to make the decision. So you're presenting them, an offer that they just really can't refuse.
That's great. Yeah, I think it makes such a big difference, the words you use and how you say it. And I would be like, great, if you want to come grocery shop for me, I hate grocery shopping. So
Exactly. I'm the one that goes down every aisle. Like, I don't go to Publix every day. I go to Publix every day. And they see me, they'll say, hey, how you doing? I'm just like, oh, this is embarrassing.
These people know me by name.
Right. They're like, you here again? I'm like, really? Then Taylor, I try to go really, really early in the morning, like at 7:30, right? So it can be different people. But hey, good morning. You back again? So yeah, but again, you have to know the person. You have to better understand what's important to them. You have to better understand what they like and what they don't like. So that way, when you present this plan, it's basically what it is. You present this plan to them that they can't refuse. And that's the biggest piece, is getting buy-in from them and allowing them to appear to make the decision. But we go in making demands on them. We're making commands and not offering invitations, right? So it's a directive. And so you don't want to give them a directive. You want to provide them an invitation to participate.
I like that verbiage, the not a command, but an invitation. That's a great way to think about it. Well, that kind of wraps up all the questions that we had for today. So I just want to say thank you all for joining Dr. Macie. This was so informative and so fun. And before we log off, I just want to share a few resources with you all. You are welcome to join our Caregivers Corner, which is SeniorLiving.org's Facebook group, where caregivers can connect and share their experiences. If you have more questions about dementia, it's a place to come and just find community. We want you to remember that you're not alone if you're caring for a loved one with memory loss. And keep joining us for our live streams. These have been so much fun. Here is just a little graphic with our upcoming streams. We had to this month that were awesome, and next month we've got some more, and Dr. Macie will be back soon. So thank you all for joining, and thank you so much, Dr. Macie.
Thank you for having me, Taylor, and thank y'all for joining and for your amazing questions.
Yes, thank you. All right, we'll see you all next time. Bye.